Support for this episode of PBS Reno Arts is provided by the Nevada Arts Council. Arts and creativity make us stronger, fueling innovation, prosperity, and thriving communities across Nevada. They boost our economy, promote well-being, and enhance education, empowering Nevadans of all ages. The Nevada Arts Council nurtures these essential creative forces. Together, let's elevate the arts in every corner of our great state. More at nvartscouncil.org. This is PBS Reno Arts. I'm Dave Santina from the studio of PBS Reno in Reno, Nevada. And I always have a good feeling for everybody who comes in here and sits across from me doing this podcast, but I can honestly say that today's guest is someone I truly love. First time I get to say that. My wife, Jessica, is here. Hi.
Hi there.
Thanks for letting me rope you into coming in. I know it's not your favorite, but I think it would be fun. And there's a legitimate reason. You write theater articles, reviews, previews, you name it, for the Reno News and Review. You just did you just went to a rehearsal the other day that you're going to turn into a story. And I thought this is our chance to talk about writing theater reviews and also arts in general and writing and all of the things you do, because you do a million things. So I just thought it would be fun. So we'll find out if it's fun or if it's just super weird. We'll see.
You might just learn something about me. That'd be great.
It's about time. Almost 20 years. 20 years this year's 20-year anniversary. I'm finally going to learn something.
Yeah.
All right. So you went to this rehearsal a couple of days ago. So when this is gonna drop on Monday, and then on Friday of the same week is a show opening at Bruca. But you went to a rehearsal a couple of nights ago, and so your story is coming out in the next News and Review, but it's not a review because you just saw the rehearsal. So it's a preview, right?
Yeah, that's the nature of the deadline, is that I don't always have the luxury of getting to see the full-fledged opened show when I cover it. So, and I try to make sure that my coverage is spread out across all the the performing arts companies and try to give adequate coverage to everybody. So sometimes that means I have to make it work in other ways. So I went to Bruca, and Mary Bennett was kind enough. So she's the producing artistic director over there, and she was kind enough to invite me down to the theater, and I did a little interview with her, and she shared with me her script for her original play, Bruckelton, which will be opening in early May, and talked to me a little bit about the inspiration, some of the thinking behind the characters, and some elements of the plot. And then I stayed for the first act of rehearsal. And so the story I'll be writing will be a preview of the show. So it'll be letting audiences, it's just to whet their appetite with no critical review involved in that.
Okay, so I looked at the website at Bruca just to see when the show plays. According to the website, maybe this is, they may have changed it. It says April 25th through May 17th.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay.
That sounds right. But my deadline is the week prior.
Yeah, right. So you got, so this we're recording on a Thursday. This is going to drop to be heard on a Monday, and then the show starts on Friday. So if you're listening to this is hopefully inspiring you to check out first the News and Review story, but then go and see the show. You always encourage people to go. Which is, I think, something that when you're talking about local theater, that's a huge part of this. It's because it's sensitive to do criticism of local theater when
of
you're
your
not
neighbors. Yeah.
So how do you approach it?
Yeah, that's something that comes up quite a bit, actually. Early on when I first started doing this, not all the feedback that I would get about my reviews was kind. Sometimes people were really put out by it.
They get defensive.
Yeah. And my philosophy has always been, it doesn't do anybody any favors to just say a whole bunch of nice stuff if the show has problems. Sure. I feel like it's my job as the reviewer, and And the way I see what I was hired to do in the very first place is to encourage people to support local performing arts, but also to act when in my writing to be the audience, or like to be the voice of the audience, to see the show sort of through the audience's eyes and report on it as the audience would appreciate, and see it in a way that's totally separate from the people putting the work on. So it's my job, I think, to let them know that an audience member maybe is having trouble understanding the pace at which a line is delivered, or that maybe tech issues were interfering with my enjoyment of the show, or that maybe the story does feel too long, or that, that maybe the sound was too quiet or too loud. I just feel like it's my job to, I guess, gently apply pressure. I don't even think that's what it is. Gently to let the actors, the performers, and of course all the people who are putting on this work, how that work is responded to, because you can't get better without feedback, and that goes for any person who does a creative endeavor. I mean, as a writer, I've been doing this for a long time, and I can't write in a vacuum. I need feedback, and we all need feedback, and so I think that's my job, but I'm never going to. They're not all winners. I'm going to be honest.
True.
I have noticed in the amount of time that I've been doing this, which is, oh my gosh, I'm dating myself. I guess like 24 years or something like that.
Don't discount dating yourself. I used to date you, and I loved it.
But yeah, I mean, in the amount of time I've been doing this, I have watched the theater scene grow and mature, and it's been a really lovely thing to see. And I would hope in some very tiny way I've had a say in that. So I always want to encourage people to go to our local shows, and then I want to lift, a rising tide lifts all boats,
sure.
Right? So I want to encourage those companies to, in turn, get better, and then continue to encourage more and more audiences and grow and develop, and everybody wins.
Agreed. I have an example of how you I think how you do that when you write your reviews. There was a recent one in February, a show at Good Luck Macbeth called Murder Mystery at the Mother Regina. It was an original piece. We went together. I get to go to a lot of these, which is so fun. I love it because not only do I get to enjoy shows, I love to go to shows, but then we talk about it on the way home, and we're kicking it around, and like this was great and this was not great, and I think that I appreciate the effort or the ambition. Maybe that was impossible to pull off, but some of it was amazing that they pulled off. It's really fun. I enjoy that. I'm glad you have this job because I get to see shows and talk about it. And so one thing you wrote, I just want to show an example of how to write it, where you can praise and also be critical, but not in a negative, not in a nasty way. You're not trying to pick it. You're just trying to be authentic. So the beginning of this review, you write a positive message about the writer. Lopez's writing of dialogue is impressive, particularly in the first act. It's funny, snappy, and authentic, particularly to young adults. The blood-soaked stage frights are very well done. Did I mention there's a lot of blood? That made me laugh. I sat in the back row and caught quite a bit of chocolate-scented spatter. I'm told it will wash out. That was funny. And the acting is marvelous, particularly from, and you name 3 actors. And then later you write, yet there are improvements that could be made, and I hope they will, so that the show continues to evolve and maybe even expand its reach. The first act's writing and performances are so strong, it makes the second act's sputters more obvious as the actors rush to recite lines without really embodying them. And I remember that conversation in the car about exactly that. And it was, when something is really good, it makes it really contrasts when the direction shifts and it maybe doesn't feel as strong later in the same show. And that's one where you wrote positive things. At the end of that, you talked about, people should go and see it for themselves. Still we're seeing, right? And so I think that, and then you also have written about, later on, earlier in January, you wrote about a different piece that was done at Restless Artist Theater, which actually moved you, and it had to do with cloning.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you wrote a different kind of piece where you talked about your own personal reaction to it.
Well, yeah. So in all the years I've been doing this, I've kind of developed a little formula. So, you've heard of the compliment sandwich.
Yeah.
It's sort of that's a little bit how I approach this. I usually kind of lead in with, one of the things about being a writer is that anecdote and example and concreteness is what draws people in, and we relate to other people. So abstract concepts don't usually work, but the concrete do. And so I always try to apply a little bit of like what I'm feeling, or maybe a story about an experience I'm having, as kind of a way in that maybe would be relatable to other people. And then we'll go into a little bit of, plot description, always being very sensitive about revealing what Mary Bennett called a long time ago auroras, like the revelations, any spoilers. I don't want to spoil anything. I don't want to feel like I've given up the whole plot. I accidentally, early on in doing this, revealed something that I didn't realize was super confidential, and kind of took some heat from it. So I'm usually really careful about that. And some of the things that delight and surprise me, I want to have the audience have that opportunity to be surprised and delighted as well. So I try not to reveal anything that would ruin that experience. And then definitely want to praise early on and often. If I feel like that there's something that could be done better, just negative feedback without it being constructive is never going to be beneficial. Nobody's going to get anything from that. So I want that kind of criticism to be substantive and useful and helpful, and always with an eye toward, look, we all want this to be better for everybody.
Sure.
Because we want you to do well. So that's always sort of how I approach it. And before I know it, my 600 words are filled.
Is it always 600?
Usually in there, sometimes longer, depending on what the story is. If I'm doing sort of a profile, usually it'll go longer. But usually right in that 600 word thing, especially for print, is kind of the sweet spot. So you have to be really economical. Yeah, I find myself, I just write and write and write, and then it gets really long, and then it's easier to cut, and then I try to go for those action verbs and cut out the adjectives. But yeah, it's been kind of interesting because I have found that people, it's funny, I get very few brushes with like being famous, but every now and then, especially in recent years, I'll bump into somebody that I know from the theater scene, and they'll know my name.
Yeah.
And it feels like that I've given them something valuable, and that they're appreciative, and that also my opinion means something. And I think that's really cool, and not like in a way that's like, oh, look how popular or important I am, but more like that they've taken it to heart, and that they read it too and gave it some thought. And in that way, I hope that I'm helping to kind of contribute to the scene a little bit. That makes me feel really good.
Yeah, it makes me feel really good because I was at this show we were just talking about, the one at Good Luck Macbeth, and we were waiting outside to get in, along with Dana Nolsh, who, if you were listening to any of these podcasts earlier, you've heard Dana on here, who
Yeah.
I only know because he's at every theater
We
performance.
bump into each other everywhere we go.
Every time. And so anyway, we're chatting, and somebody that comes out, it might have been the director, but asked, I forget, you introduced yourself to this person, and they said, "Oh, Jessica Santina. Oh, I love your articles. I love your writing," and they just gushed, and it was great. I was over in the corner being proud.
Well, thank you.
And so, just an example of how you encourage people. You will introduce your own experience and then encourage people to have their own. This article about Restless Artist Theater's show By and By, which has to do with a man who clones his daughter is a clone, and it turns out that there's much more to that story that is troubling to the daughter, and asks a lot of questions about, we'll go back to Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park. You tried so hard, or you did so much to figure out whether you could, you didn't bother to think whether you should.
Yeah.
And so you wrote, the last thing you wrote in that review was, in the end, I was moved almost to tears and left wrestling with this question: what would I have done? I'm still not sure. It's a question worth spending 90 minutes on to ponder yourself. That's well written, if I might say so myself.
Thank you.
And so your reaction is yours. You cop to it, you write about it, but you also are encouraging anybody that's reading that to go figure it out for themselves. And I think that's the proper, it feels like a proper balance to try to get people to go out and enjoy their own experience, but also give them a sense of what's coming or what they might experience.
Well, and I think that's the beauty of live theater. There are very few things that we can do with others, sitting together and having an experience together. I mean, even you think about a movie theater, you're all sharing an experience together, but it's in the dark, and you sort of it's designed to kind of tune you out and make you the sole person in that room, or to at least feel that way. But with live theater, there's something really special there that I think is hard to reproduce in another way. And I just can't encourage people enough to partake in that as often as possible. There's something really that happens when there are people in the room with you who are playing out this story and giving you issues to think about, and asking hard questions, and criticizing society. I just think there's nothing more powerful than that we can do as a community. I think that's really the power of art, is that it touches us in our own ways, and we all can relate in certain ways. And every night is also different, which I think is really cool too. This Brucker show, it was an original piece written by Mary Bennett, but it's still evolving because the actors are contributing something. And as the audience is giving feedback or laughing at certain things, they might play it up or tweak it for the next night. So it's never going to be the same. A show that you see live with an audience is never the same show again. You've had a unique experience that will never be reproduced. And if you think about it like that, it's like you don't want to miss that. Right. So that's what I really want to emphasize in this kind of work, is it's like, all I can speak for is myself. This is the experience I had when I was there, and these are all the things that made me think of. Who knows what it's going to make you think of, but it's worth trying that, even if it's sometimes uncomfortable, because it opens your eyes and makes you think about things that we don't often get to think about. So that's why I feel like I'll always do this kind of work, because I just think it matters so much. It's, supporting the arts is really just important to me. And gosh, going to see shows is just super fun.
I love it.
I'm super lucky. Yeah.
I don't know how I'd get to them if it wasn't for you.
You'd make time.
I am coattails all the way.
Well, and I love taking somebody, whether it's you or whether it's one of our friends. I love taking other people to these, because I feel like that car drive home afterward is always so enlightening, and I'd love to hear what other people think, and then it's like, oh, it didn't even occur to me like that, and that can be part of my response. And so it's almost like I need that conversation to kind of process what I just saw, especially if stuff's hard to digest. It's like I need someone to say, what did I just see? I don't understand what just happened, and then that other person might have a different take, and I just think that's lovely when that happens.
Yeah, and it's the conversation is from the sort of conceptual level, like, you're talking about just the experience of being in a place with other people, and what is this show about, and what are they trying to get across, and is it successful, all the way to the sort of basic, the lighting, the performances.
All of those things affect the experience,
and
right?
Somebody was fantastic, and somebody actually took you out of the show because they were struggling so much to embody their character or to perform. That's all really interesting. And I I will
And
never.
even when there's, I'm sorry, even when there's an audience around me that's noisy,
Yeah.
which we've definitely experienced.
Many times.
But that can affect my experience too. And I'm going to call that out. Like,
Yeah.
that's also an opportunity to teach audiences
Right.
because I think that is a skill that needs to be
Yeah,
taught,
well-
how to be a good audience.
Not a long. Well, now it feels like a long time ago, but it was pre-November election. Had Ryan in here, Ryan Costella, and Rod Hearn, who performed in Ryan's his show that he put out at the time called Democracy Suicide. I think they've changed the title going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I said it on the recording, but afterward I was talking to Rod Hearn, who teaches theater in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and so a lot of times his students come to the nights that you get tickets for because you're going to media night or preview nights to try to generate interest for a show. And these high school students come in and they are theater kids, so they're all fired up and they're all geeked out and they're
very
they're
passionate.
in their element, but they're super loud sometimes, and
Yeah.
they sometimes overreact in the show in a way that makes it about them and not about really reacting to what's happening in the show. And
I think this thing that we do now, which is where most of our show watching takes place at home, has made us a little too comfortable a little bit with the that nuance of being an audience member and listening, and not every thought you have has to be verbalized.
right.
And things like, the opening of the wrappers and even looking at your phone, that's like a little flashlight. And
Man.
but I think talking back and that kind of thing, it's, I love to see enthusiasm, but it is also kind of an interesting thing. Just it's been maybe in the last decade where I've really seen this change in audiences. And this feeling like you need to shout out to let the actors know that you're there, or that you're enjoying it,
Right.
instead of giving them the floor. And I do think in a little small way that what I do is important for just reminding audiences, like, come have this experience and give them the respect that they've earned from learning this, and really savoring that relationship and the training and practice that they've put into it.
Yeah, I will say I'm very careful to open my plastic bag before the curtain goes.
What is it with people thinking the longer it takes, the better? No,
slow.
just rip it and get it
Yeah,
over with,
just-
guys.
just
Just
do it.
rip it.
Just open your snack bag before the show and have it in
Slower
your
just
pocket.
makes it longer.
Just
That's
have
all.
Just have it in your pocket and just pull your little M&Ms out one at a time without having to rattle or rustle the bag.
Well, and the other thing, you mentioned the media reviews. That's also kind of a sticky thing with what I do, is that, a lot of times I am so fortunate to be invited to media previews because this press is beneficial to people, and the theater companies have really caught on to that. That didn't used to be a thing when I first started this. And I like to think, I don't know for sure, but I like to think that the creation of that opportunity has been so that they can get that kind of coverage. But because of that, and we're always told early on, like, this is our final dress rehearsal, basically. The show hasn't opened yet. Like, you go to a Reno Little Theater media preview and they're going to hand you a little form. If there's, if something happens, we may have to stop and have them redo the scene, or, we want your feedback. There's still time for us to fix it. Being that that's the case, I don't feel like it's my right to be fully, I need to be transparent about that to my audience. That's part of my task, is that I have to be really honest and say, look, I was invited to this media preview. It's possible that some of the things that I'm mentioning here are going to get squared away. So I almost have to call that out. And that transparency, I think, is what helps to build trust. We have to have credibility with the audience, because if they don't trust what we say, or if they feel like we're being too harsh or unfair, then they're not going to listen to what we have to say, and that defeats the purpose.
Right.
So.
And then you make enemies in the theater groups anyway, because they are letting you in.
But if they're talking about me too, I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword. Like, the more talk there is, the better. But
Sure.
I don't want to be the person who's like, she complains about stuff. And I really make a point of like not complain. Nothing's perfect.
Right.
We can all use some improvement. And so I want to call that stuff out, but in a way that is kind and respectful and supportive of what they're doing. Because this is hard. Like, I couldn't get up there and act. I couldn't do it. And I don't profess to be able to. But my job is just to speak for the audience and to speak to the audience. That's really the goal.
Well, and I think that's you are being transparent when you tell people, hey, this was a preview, which means that this was a rehearsal and not a complete performance. That tells the people who are putting on the show that you get it and that you get it enough to explain it to the audience and that they would understand. There's a mutual respect that I think it comes through so people understand that. And I'm not just saying that because I'm married to you. I think you do a good job, a fantastic job. And so I wrote a whole bunch of notes that I'm not getting to because we already are 26 minutes and I could go another hour because I like talking to you.
Well, thank you.
We talk more here today than we have most days in the last
Well, it's funny. We don't often talk
month.
about our work. A lot of times you don't know what I'm doing all day when I'm writing.
That's right. I don't.
So
This is how I figured it out.
this is one aspect of my work, but it's certainly one of my favorites, which is why I've been doing it for a really, really long time. And I just can't say enough good about the Reno News and Review and the trust they put in me, but also the commitment that they've consistently made to supporting the arts, to supporting arts organizations, and to being fair and objective and really following through with that task of being the voice for the community. And so it's something that I'll always do as long as they'll have me, because I'm really lucky to get to do it.
Yeah, and I'm really lucky to get to tag along on some of these. So I appreciate that. So I wrote a whole bunch of other stuff, notes to myself about all the other work that you do. And maybe another time you can come back and talk about other stuff like ghostwriting. I think that's a fascinating subject. People don't know how that works, but it is an art.
Yeah, it's a weird job, I tell you.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you do that is amazing. One quick, if you would, just because I'm imagining somebody wondering this while they listen, how did you get started doing the theater stuff? Because you weren't like coming out of the theater.
It was super by chance. No, I went to Emory University in Atlanta. And I, had work study as one of my financial aid offerings was that I qualified for work study. So very first week of school, you go to this fair, like a job fair to apply for various work study positions. And Theater Emory had a position open for house manager. And I don't know what it was about that I just was like, well, that's a job. I could work at the theater as a job. So I interviewed with them, and they took a shine to me. And so I got the opportunity I was sort of managing the front of house operations. So selling and taking tickets, posting flyers, interacting with guests, that sort of thing. Making programs, distributing programs, hiring ushers, training ushers. It was super fun. And in my 4 years of doing that, got to really experience some incredible theater. That theater has blossomed so much. But I got to do things that were sort of classic works, but also like independent things that were written and developed on campus, and supporting students and thinking about ways to promote the theater. So, so anyway, I moved to Reno, and with your encouragement, actually, quit the job that I was miserable in and went out on my own as a freelance writer. And early on, this was in 2004, 2003, in order to get work because, I was broke and jobless. I just very ambitiously started emailing editors of every publication in town. And at the time, Brian Berghardt was the editor over at the Reno News and Review. I was very fortunate. I also happened to be in a local writing and critique group, a named writers group. And so I knew him from that group, and I reached out to him and I said, hey, I have gone out on my own. I'd love to, if you ever have any work, let me know. I'm in that phase. And he was like, oh my gosh, I'd love to have you come on. So he put me in touch with their arts and culture editor, Miranda Jesh. She threw me an assignment to do a review of a show. And I guess I did a good job because
I guess you did.
After I submitted it, Miranda, she emailed me and she said, we want to make you our regular theater beat writer. Would that interest you? And I was like, heck yeah. And through the ups and downs, through several editors, through Brian's leaving, through the magazine folding and then being re-energized by Jimmy Bogle, all of this time, I have been fortunate enough to be the theater writer on staff. And I write a lot of arts and culture stuff, not just theater, but also, dance, visual arts. But the theater is just something that has become near and dear to my heart. And I've grown to love this theater community that we have. And I just am so excited to see it growing and flourishing and all the things that are coming. It's just a really cool thing to have been a part of.
Well, based on what I've witnessed, the theater community has grown to love you as well. I sure do. So, all right, we got to get out of here. So thank you for giving me a half an hour.
Yeah, I hope I said something worth hearing.
I think so. I'm a little biased.
Thank you for inviting me.
But I think so. I think you should come back and do some more another day.
Well, perhaps.
I think we should do it.
I'd be happy to do it. Just let me know.
So, thank you. Before we go, I got to remind everybody who's listening to PBS Reno Arts that you should watch Artifacts on PBS Reno. That's via broadcast, stream on pbsreno.org or the PBS Reno YouTube channel or the PBS app. Also, read art views at pbsreno.org. Now, do you have a question or maybe a comment or a suggestion? If so, send those to me at podcasts@pbsreno.org. You can ask me, how dare you have your own wife on the show? My thanks to the lovely and talented Jessica Santina, and thank you for listening to PBS Reno Arts. Support for this episode of PBS Reno Arts is provided by the Nevada Arts Council. Arts and creativity make us stronger, fueling innovation, prosperity, and thriving communities across Nevada. They boost our economy, promote well-being, and enhance education, empowering Nevadans of all ages. The Nevada Arts Council nurtures these essential creative forces. Together, let's elevate the arts in every corner of our great state. More at nvartscouncil.org.